this video, we're going to look at how to pick up stitches along the heel flap when knitting a flap and gusset style sock. So I've got these two edges along my heel flap that I need to pick up stitches to continue to work in the round. And to do that, I take a double pointed needle, and you can pick up both legs of the stitch, but I prefer to pick up just the outer leg of that stitch. So you're going to take your DPN and go through the center of each one of these stitches at the salve edge of your knitting, and your pattern will tell you how many stitches you'll need to pick up. And it's helpful to pick up one stitch right in the corner between your heel flap and your foot stitches, and that stops you from having a hole right here in your knitting. But I'm going to switch that around so it leans the same way as the other stitches on my needle. Now I always test this out. If I were to knit through the back loop of this stitch, I'm going to have a large gap in my knitting at the edge of that heel flap. So I want to knit through the front loop in order to twist that stitch. So these right leaning loops across my needle need to be knit as normal or through the front loop, so that we're twisting each one of these stitches as we go and closing any gaps that would be running along that heel flap. So you'll just continue to twist those stitches until you get to the end of your DPN. And then you can drop that DPN, just checking we didn't leave any gaps there, and we'll knit across the foot stitches here across the top of our sock. And then we'll look at how to pick up stitches on the other side of the heel flap. There we go. Once we hit that last stitch, I'm going back to double count how many stitches I picked up along that heel flap, including the one in the corner that I added. And just to make sure that I pick up the same number on this side. If you find that the stitches are resisting you, you might just be going the wrong direction through those stitches. So on this side, I'm coming up from underneath through the stitch, just because that's what feels more natural and what the yarn wants to do. And then I'm backtracking here to pick up a stitch in the corner. And I like to pick up the second bar down. That just seems to make a cleaner picked up stitch for me. Again, if I were to knit that through the back loop, or through, on this side, if I were to knit that as normal, it would create that gap that we don't want. So I'm going to knit these stitches through the back loop, and that's because they're leaning left on my needle. So as I knit these through the back loop, it's twisting the stitch and eliminating any gaps along the edge of my heel flap. That's not always going to be a problem. If you find that not twisting these stitches is not giving you any gaps, then just go ahead and knit them normally. But with this weight of yarn, it seems to be leaving me a gap, so I'm twisting my stitches. And then with most patterns, they'll tell you to knit halfway across the heel before placing your start of round stitch marker, and that's going to be your new start of round. But there you go, that's picking up stitches along the heel flap to create your gusset section for your sock.